Vietnam is such an exciting destination. There's something for everyone.
Thì tôi có thấy một cái yếu tố rất là hay là Booking.com nhắc về việc là khách du lịch có thể đi du lịch cùng với thú cưng của họ. Và tôi thấy rằng là yếu tố này rất là ít nền tảng ở Việt Nam giới thiệu cho du khách.
When we say everyone, we mean everyone. Whether you're a parent of children, whether you're a parent of little fluffy four-legged dog, whether you are traveling with your partner, whether you're traveling with your family, whether you're traveling with your grandparents, that's really what is driving Booking.com's mission and why we continue to innovate in the way that we do. 5 or 7 years ago, we were still talking about things like plastic straws versus paper straws. It's not so much about that anymore. They already expect you to be sustainable in terms of your operations. I'm spending money on this hotel. How is that money benefiting the communities in Vietnam? Travelers are experiencing something we called the era of you. Every single step when it comes to travel is incredibly personal. People are chasing experiences. They're no longer just chasing a holiday. We understand that there are all of these different kinds of channels, but we want to focus on making sure that Booking.com gives customers the confidence to make us the channel of choice.
Xin chào quý độc giả đã trở lại với series podcast Chầm Chậm Chuyện Trò và mình là Minh Hiếu, quản lý nội dung trên tên du lịch định hướng lữ hành Travel. Trong tập podcast ngày hôm nay thì Minh Hiếu mời quý độc giả cùng gặp gỡ một vị khách mời rất đặc biệt và Hiếu tin rằng cuộc gặp gỡ với vị khách mời này sẽ mở ra rất là nhiều thông tin thú vị, đặc biệt cho những ai yêu thích việc đi du lịch tự túc. Mình có những cái booking ở trên mình chọn phòng, chọn vé máy bay cũng như là chọn các tiện ích giải trí tại điểm đến. Vị khách mời hôm nay chính là ông Branavan, giám đốc của Booking.com tại Việt Nam. Xin chào ông. Lời đầu tiên thì Minh Hiếu xin được mời ông sẽ có đôi lời giới thiệu về bản thân của mình cũng như là Booking.com tại Việt Nam.
Okay, hi. So my name is Brana, and I'm the country head for Vietnam. Booking.com in Vietnam, we've been around for a while now. We've been operating in Vietnam for over a decade. And especially in the last 2 years, Vietnam has become one of our most exciting destinations, not just in Asia Pacific, but globally. I think it's slowly moving now, Vietnam, from just being an intra-region travel space to a totally global destination.
Với góc độ là một người quản lý cấp cao của Booking.com tại Việt Nam cũng như là chính bản thân ông khi đến Việt Nam thì ông đánh giá như thế nào về du lịch tại Việt Nam ạ?
It's getting more and more incredibly exciting. I think what's very interesting about Vietnam is if I think about a few years ago, people only think of Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi or Da Nang. But now more and more people are discovering other parts of Vietnam. Most recently, Mui Ne is one of the most globally trending destinations in Vietnam. So what we're seeing is that as the travel base in Vietnam continues to grow, more and more of the visitors into Vietnam are discovering so many of the different things that Vietnam has to offer.
Trong thời gian vừa qua thì bản thân của tôi cũng như là độc giả của Travel có nhận thấy rằng là ngoài những điểm đến nổi tiếng như Hà Nội, Đà Nẵng hay Hồ Chí Minh, Booking.com cũng đã có rất là nhiều hoạt động xúc tiến tại Mũi Né và chúng tôi cũng thấy được rằng là khách du lịch Việt Nam họ cũng khá là quan tâm sau những cái bài báo cũng như là những hoạt động xúc tiến của Booking.com tại Mũi Né.
Yes, absolutely. I think Booking.com, our mission has always been making it easier for everyone to experience the world. And how we're doing that is via the connected trip. So everything, every step of the journey that the customer takes from booking their flights to landing in, beautiful either Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi as the entry point, booking their taxi, booking their hotel, and then also finding all of these different experiences. Booking.com is committed to enabling more and more people to see more of Vietnam.
Với ông thì Booking.com tại Việt Nam nhận xét như thế nào về hành vi của khách du lịch Việt Nam họ đang đặt những cái dịch vụ qua nền tảng của mình?
What's really amazing about Vietnam is, of course, number one is the diversity of the tourists, because of course we've got a lot of really big markets like Europe, America, which constantly come here, but we've also got growing markets. We've got markets like the Philippines, we've got markets like India, and of course, most importantly, we've got the domestic market, the Vietnamese tourists who still remain very, very important to us and the ecosystem of Vietnam. More and more people are traveling in terms of even generations. What we're seeing from our traveler trends, which it's incredibly exciting. We've done our traveler trends for almost 10 years now. So we've been able to see over the last 10 years how the Vietnamese traveler has evolved. And what we're really seeing now is that travel is becoming incredibly intentional and very, very personal. Everyone is traveling according to their values, to their philosophies. It's no longer just about traveling for a birthday or traveling for an anniversary. It's celebrating even the smallest milestones or celebrating a destination or a holiday that is aligned with my values. Perhaps if I wanted to go and celebrate a hobby of mine, if I'm a really big fan of, say, Harry Potter, I want to travel and have an experience that's going to give me a very Harry Potter feeling. Like, for example, in Bana Hills, there are some beautiful architectures and castles. People might go there to be able to live those experiences. So, what we're seeing is, in addition to being very intentional, travel is becoming very, very hyper personal.
Thưa ông, với việc người Việt Nam ngày càng cá nhân hóa hơn trong cái hành trình du lịch của mình, thì ông có nhận thấy điểm khác biệt giữa thế hệ millennial và thế hệ Gen Z hay không?
The biggest difference among all of the different generations, whether we look at, say, Gen X or the millennials, Gen Z, or even Gen Alpha who are traveling now, it's really how they leverage technology. AI is all of us are talking about in the industry and even outside of the industry. And how young people are leveraging AI is how travel is changing. What we have observed now for especially younger travelers, the travelers of tomorrow, they are really placing a lot of importance in the inspiration phase of travel. If we think back to a few years ago, when we think about travel, we just, okay, I want to go on a holiday. I'm going to book my flight. I'm going to book my hotel. I'll get to the destination and figure out what I'm going to do. But what's happening now is that in the inspiration phase, that's where you can capture the traveler. If somebody is scrolling on TikTok, for example, a young person, and they see a beautiful destination in Vietnam that really inspires them, that's what's going to kickstart your travel experience. So like I mentioned, it's not really about celebrating a very big milestone or, just going because as a family we travel every year. Really now it starts at the inspiration phase, and what we're seeing is more and more people are embracing this change by really using technology more effectively.
Với những chia sẻ của ông thì tôi thấy rằng là khách du lịch hiện tại họ đang sử dụng nhiều công nghệ hơn cho chuyến đi của mình. Nhưng mà bên cạnh đó thì công nghệ nó cũng sẽ quyết định rất là nhiều ý thức của du khách, đặc biệt là tính bền vững của một điểm đến. Thì qua nền tảng Booking.com, ông nhận thấy điều đó như thế nào?
So it's very interesting, right? The question is, are people using technology to explore more sustainable options, or are they discovering more sustainable options by using technology? It's a little bit of both. So recently I traveled to Chiang Mai for a holiday and I stayed in this beautiful farmhouse. And when I got there, I realized how much the owner had invested in being sustainable, in the way that they conserve water, in the way that they use power, in the way that all of their attractions was very much based around community activities, helping the people in Chiang Mai, bringing more customers to their, say, workshops or to their small stores. And for me on that trip, personally, I'm a very sustainable traveler, but I wasn't looking for sustainable options. And what I realized, I'm also one of those many customers who now the mindset has shifted where sustainability is no longer just a requirement, it's an expectation. It's something that we want by default, right? When a traveler goes into a property or goes to a destination, they want to be very confident that they are able to leave that destination in a better condition than when they arrived. That's really what we're seeing from our studies. And so with providers, whether it's hospitality providers, transportation providers, attraction providers, making it very clear how and why they're sustainable, that's really what's going to help them stand out.
Tôi được biết là Booking.com rất là lớn mạnh với dịch vụ book phòng, và bản thân của Booking.com đã có những cái hoạt động hoặc là những chính sách gì để giúp lan tỏa những giá trị bền vững tại các địa điểm nghỉ dưỡng, ví dụ như homestay, khách sạn hay resort?
Yes, absolutely. So I think like with everything, we say we have to walk the talk, right? So at Booking.com, we've also got our goals to become net zero in the next couple of years. And we want to bring our partners, all of our channel partners, along with us on that journey. What we're doing to help support the partners' missions to become more sustainable, we are collaborating actively with a lot of local governments as well to understand what are their sustainability goals and where we can support, right? And then in certain situations, in some countries, we're even working with global sustainable councils. Recently in Thailand, we had a really big event where we co-sponsored the Global Sustainable Tourism Forum and the GSTC, which is the most prominent sustainability certification program. We actually even sponsored some of our partners to be able to train and get certified to be able to show customers that they are certified by a recognized body. We're taking small steps to be able to make sure our partners are ready for the future of sustainability. And on our end, our teams always try our best to keep up to date with exactly what trends we're seeing and sharing those with all of our partners to be able to spread it across Vietnam and the rest of Asia Pacific as well.
Với những hoạt động của mình thì du khách sẽ đánh giá như thế nào về những cái giá trị mà Booking.com cùng với lại đối tác mang lại cho họ? Ông có một số liệu hay là một minh chứng cụ thể nào để trao đổi rõ hơn về vấn đề này không?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We are actually even seeing the majority of Vietnamese travelers across generations. Going back to your question about, what are some of the consumer behavior changes between millennials and Gen Z and Gen X? That with sustainability, that's one thing that we see common across the board, right? All generations of travelers in Vietnam expect a certain level of sustainability when it comes to their travel. But what that looks like is a little bit different. So if we look at, say, the youngest people, if you look at Gen Alpha, Gen Z, what we're seeing is they expect more engagement with communities. So if I was traveling to, for example, Sapa, I would expect to be able to not just stay at my hotel and explore some of the big attractions. I also want to go and engage with the communities. I want to see actually what's happening. What do the locals do? What do they offer? And if you look at some of the millennials, people like me, my age group, they prefer to go out and only support local goods. They want to go out, they don't want to come to Ho Chi Minh City and go to a mall and buy a branded bag. They want to go to a small shop, they want to go and support local Vietnamese businesses. And if we think about, say, the older generation, well, not the older generation, but the Gen X and the older millennials, it's more about still pretty much streamlining where they can reduce their carbon footprint. So we may not see as much of engagement with local communities. It's still there. It's still very important for this generation of travelers. But for them, they also take a lot of responsibility in how they travel, right? Are they making sure that their carbon footprint is being controlled? Are they making sure, like I mentioned, they're leaving these destinations in a better condition than when they left? So it's a nice uniformity across all generations when it comes to sustainability for travelers in Vietnam.
Ngoài tệp khách du lịch Việt Nam thì khách du lịch quốc tế khi đến với Việt Nam, họ có những tiêu chí hay những yêu cầu riêng gì về việc phát triển bền vững thông qua các dịch vụ booking của họ, và có sự khác biệt hay không giữa nhóm khách châu Á cũng như là châu Âu, Bắc Mỹ?
Yeah, there are some key differences. I think especially with European travelers, because if we think of Europe, they are really at the forefront of sustainability. They've got so many practices, not just in hotels, right? Even in their public services, in how they treat water, how they treat energy. And so that culture is already very much cultivated in those travelers. And that's why, going back to what I mentioned earlier, as travelers, what we're seeing when it comes to sustainability is that it's no longer just a requirement, it's an expectation. A lot of travelers now show up, and what they need to feel confident to be able to stay with you is that they don't have to think about sustainability. They want to show up knowing that the hotel they're staying at, the attraction they're going to, the transportation that they're using, they're all being as sustainable as possible. That's really where the changes happen, right? If we think about 5 or 7 years ago, we were still talking about things like, plastic straws versus paper straws and bringing reusable water bottles. It's not so much about that anymore, especially Western, the global North travelers. When they come, I think their questions are a lot deeper than that. They already expect you to be sustainable in terms of your operations, but now they're also thinking one step further. I'm coming, I'm spending money on this hotel. How is that money benefiting the communities in Vietnam? How is it that my stay at this hotel is leaving a positive impact on the communities in Vietnam? That's really the question a lot of, I think, businesses need to start thinking about. It's not just about saving energy, saving water, which is all incredibly important, is how are we now turning things around to bring more positive benefits to the destinations.
Ông có nhận thấy sự khác biệt này đối với du khách châu Á khi đến Việt Nam hay không? Có thể là Hàn Quốc, Nhật Bản hoặc là Đài Loan, Trung Quốc.
Across all nationalities, right? I think when it comes to sustainable expectations, it doesn't differ too much from, say, European travelers or Asian travelers. Of course, if we think about Europe, America specifically, or rather just Europe, they are very much more ahead in the game of where sustainable practices are concerned. We're still looking for, a lot of new opportunities within Asia Pacific to be able to make people more conscious. But in terms of what they expect, we actually kind of see pretty much the same. But how they look for it is a little bit different. So if we think about Asian travelers, it's not so much about thinking, okay, is this sustainable? They still expect it, they want it to be sustainable, but at the end of the day, it's still very much a value for money. I think as Asians, one thing we're constantly looking for is how are we getting the best deal? How are we getting the best returns for what I'm spending? I think how we package those things need to maybe change a little bit for, say, the travelers from the West and the travelers in Asia. I think that's the key difference. But in terms of the expectations of what sustainability looks like, it's pretty much aligned across the world.
Tôi nghe ông có chia sẻ thêm về vấn đề là khách châu Á họ sẽ có đặt một tiêu chí về giá cả của đặt dịch vụ phòng hoặc là vui chơi giải trí hoặc là của chuyến bay. Bản thân ông và Booking.com đã có những chính sách như thế nào hoặc là những kế hoạch như thế nào để có thể giúp tăng tính cạnh tranh của Booking.com tại Việt Nam?
In Vietnam, we are heavily investing, right? I think across the board, we are investing not just for our partners to be able to make it easier together to work with our partners. We're also investing very heavily into Vietnam to make sure that more and more travelers discover Vietnam as a destination. So if I think about how we are really living our philosophy of the connected trip in Vietnam, we work with some of the biggest transportation companies, we work with some of the biggest airlines to be able to not just bring people into Vietnam, but also help them explore a lot of different ways and a lot of different spaces in Vietnam. If we think about how we're investing digitally into Vietnam, Vietnam has always been one of our biggest priority markets in terms of not just bringing tourists into Vietnam to experience it, but also to help more Vietnamese customers experience the world in and outside of Vietnam. Of course, the biggest talk of the town these days is AI, right? How are we optimizing AI to be able to really inspire more and more travelers? If we think about how Booking.com has approached AI recently, we were one of the first to plug into ChatGPT. We were also one of the first to plug into Claude. So we're really trying our best to meet the customers where they are. We've got hundreds of millions of guests every single day. And we are trying to put into place, leveraging as much technology as we can to bring more and more people into Vietnam and experience it across the board, not just with hotels, but also in terms of attractions. So much Vietnam has to offer in terms of landscape. And that's really our mission, right? Making it easier for them to experience Vietnam.
Ok. Có thể nói là AI hiện tại là AI đang có một cái trend và cũng như là đang giữ xu hướng rất là nhiều so với khách du lịch Việt Nam cũng như là khách du lịch quốc tế đến với Việt Nam. Ông nhận thấy rằng thông qua AI thì có những cái xu hướng du lịch nào mới so với du khách ngày trước, thời gian trước hay không?
I think it goes back to what we mentioned earlier about hyper-personalization, right? For 2026 and beyond, Booking.com, what we're seeing is travelers are experiencing something we called the era of you, where every single step when it comes to travel is incredibly personal. So if an example I'm using of how maybe AI is changing how people travel, right? One of our traveler trends that we recently released was, we call it shelfie souvenirs, where people, when they travel, they don't just buy magnets or t-shirts, that say, I love Vietnam. They're also buying now things like kitchen souvenirs, like handmade bowls, for example. How is AI helping change this behavior? It's really where the entry point is, right? I might be a traveler, maybe somewhere in America, and I have no plans to travel to Vietnam at the moment. I'm watching a video on my social media and I see a beautiful mug, for example. I see a beautiful mug or a beautiful piece of glassware that I absolutely love, and I'm like, I need to buy that. And then I find out that, okay, these are all handmade mugs and bowls by a company in Ninh Bình, for example. And then that makes me discover Ninh Bình. And when I go in and look at how beautiful Ninh Bình is, it then inspires me to travel. So that's really how AI is transforming travel. The entry point of where the traveler comes from is now so much bigger, which is incredibly exciting.
Ngoài ra tôi cũng được biết là AI thì cũng sẽ giúp cho du khách họ tiếp cận được những điểm đến có thể gọi là huyền thoại mà họ chưa thể biết được. Điểm đến đó có thể mang phong cách cổ tích hoặc là điểm đến đó có thể giống như một câu chuyện thần tiên mà họ được nghe lúc nhỏ. Thì ông nghĩ sao về xu hướng này?
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That's one of our biggest trends, right? That we call the romanticy retreat. If we go back to that idea of personalization, right now, times are difficult for a lot of people, right? We're going through so many different crises, right? We've got conflicts, we've got global economic crises, lots of challenges, and people are really finding ways to power through. And this is really just another escape for them, right? We're seeing actually a really emerging trend where people watch, yeah, television shows or movies, and they truly want to kind of relive those experiences. Like I mentioned earlier, like in Bana Hills, there's a beautiful property that kind of resembles the Harry Potter castles, right? And so we can see people who say are big Harry Potter fans or very big fans of, say, sci-fi and magic. It's a really great place to go there. And if we think about how people experience travel, especially young Vietnamese travelers, one of their favorite things to do is to be able to post their photographs, right, on their social media feeds. That's really combining a really beautiful experience, right? You're discovering a new place in Bana Hills, a beautiful property. You're experiencing a fantasy getaway by maybe dressing up in front of this beautiful castle. You're being able to kind of engage on social media to share these experiences with your friends, your family, maybe even your fans. It's a full circle travel moment, and all of this is just because this particular traveler, that's exactly what they wanted to do. So, like I mentioned, the personalization is evolving incredibly quickly.
Ông nghĩ như thế nào về việc là AI cùng với ẩm thực sẽ giúp cho du khách họ có một họ xây dựng một chuyến đi đến tại điểm đến đó, mặc dù trước đó họ chưa hề có ý định. Một ví dụ cụ thể là một vài tấm hình của những người bạn họ đăng về những món ăn, hoặc là một cái phong cách chế biến món ăn ở điểm đến, khiến cho người khác cảm thấy thú vị và họ sẽ nghĩ rằng là họ nên đến đó để tham quan một lần và trải nghiệm những cái món ngon tại địa điểm.
Yeah, absolutely. If we think about why people travel, they now travel even for the smallest reasons, right? There's a story that I love to talk about how my nephew, he's in his early 20s. He recently told me that he's taking a micro retirement, which for me was very confusing. I don't know what that means. And basically, what he meant was that he just left his job. He's got 2 weeks to be able to start his new job. He's got 2 weeks off. And so he wanted to take a micro retirement, which in my mind was a vacation, right? But as this young 20-year-old, in his mind, he's like, no, I've saved all of this money. I've made the time. My travel is very, very critical, very, very important. So I want to spend that time in a very meaningful way. And to your question, that's really what drove why he wanted to travel. He wanted to experience new food. He wanted to experience a new place. And we are, like I mentioned in our traveler trends, we are seeing very, very similar kind of very specific reasons to travel. And if you think about Vietnam, it's definitely one of the biggest foodie destinations in Asia Pacific. And if I can go back to your question about what are some of the booking behaviors versus, the Western travelers versus the Asian travelers. In Asia, food is such a big part of our culture, and Vietnamese food is also incredibly famous. And that would definitely be a lot of, again, entry points, right? Like I mentioned with AI earlier, the entry points of where the traveler is coming from is growing so quickly. So somebody might see, like I mentioned, a bowl and get very excited. Somebody might actually see food and also get very excited. So the entry points are limitless, which is why Vietnam is such an exciting destination. There's something for everyone.
Rõ ràng thì AI đã giúp cho khách du lịch lên kế hoạch này, đặt dịch vụ tốt hơn. Nhưng mặt ngược lại thì cũng có nhiều du khách họ lo ngại rằng việc lạm dụng AI có thể khiến cho họ bị rò rỉ thông tin cá nhân thông qua quá trình họ đặt dịch vụ. Thì với ông thì ông nghĩ như thế nào về việc bảo mật dịch vụ cho du khách khi họ sử dụng Booking.com?
For sure. And I think what you mentioned is also very much aligned with what a lot of our guests also are concerned about. If we think about just traveling in general, right? Whether it's traveling to a particular destination, whether it's using AI, safety is always an incredibly big concern. And at Booking.com, that continues to be one of our top priorities. We've got a dedicated team who are constantly finding new ways to be able to make our website safer for our guests. In terms of the destinations, we're also always working very, very closely with local governments, right? At Booking.com, we might be a global company, but that's the reason we have so many teams across the world, because we do work very closely with local authorities to make sure that we are supporting every destination to be safer, not just in terms of physical safety, but also in terms of digital safety.
Theo số liệu tôi được biết thì trong năm 2025, Booking.com đã có hơn 100 triệu đêm phòng được đặt tại các cơ sở lưu trú và nhận được chứng nhận bền vững từ bên thứ ba. Thì điều này có ý nghĩa gì trong việc xây dựng niềm tin và sự an toàn cho du khách, cả du khách Việt Nam và du khách nước ngoài đến Việt Nam?
I think at the end of the day, it's because we try our best to truly meet the travelers where they are, right? I think we keep trying to improve our offerings to make sure that our customers always have us on top of mind. When we work with our partners, whether it's our accommodation partners, whether it's our attraction partners, our promise to them, right, is always to be able to bring them guests. That's really the goal of the company. And everything that we do in terms of whether it's the security teams that we've established to ensure that it's safe, whether it's the 24/7 customer service that we have in play to ensure our guests are taken care of, or even the 40 over languages that we support in terms of our content, we're trying to cover as much ground in order to give guests confidence that not only are we always there for you, we're there for you in your language, we're there for you when you need us, and we are taking proactive steps to make sure that we are trying our best to protect you as you go out and experience the world.
Trước khi nói chuyện với ông thì tôi cũng đã có trao đổi với lại một vài khách sạn, resort, cũng như là những cái homestay tại Việt Nam, thì họ cho tôi biết rằng hiện tại du khách của họ gặp phải việc bị lừa đảo hoặc bị mạo danh thông qua việc là khách tự đặt dịch vụ trên các nền tảng mạng xã hội. Và chính điều đó thì thúc đẩy du khách Việt Nam họ chuộng sử dụng những nền tảng OTA như Booking.com nhiều hơn. Thì ông nghĩ đây có phải là một cơ hội để Booking.com có thể xây dựng niềm tin với du khách khi mà họ đặt dịch vụ của mình hay không?
I wouldn't frame it necessarily as an opportunity, because at the end of the day, for us, our guests are most important, right? And we want them to feel safe, which is why we invest so much in making them feel safe. Even if they don't feel safe in a different platform, it's also not a very nice feeling to have for them, right? So I wouldn't frame it necessarily as an opportunity, but for us, really, it's a lesson. Because, of course, now, if we take a look at social media as a whole, the usage of social media and the number of different platforms, it's so vast. And in different countries, people have a different primary social media platform. So for us, what we want to focus on as a global company is that we understand that there are all of these different kinds of channels, but we want to focus on making sure that Booking.com gives customers the confidence to make us the channel of choice.
Khi ông nhắc về yếu tố là mạng xã hội thì Booking.com hiện tại đang có những kế hoạch như thế nào để lắng nghe những đánh giá từ khách hàng trên các nền tảng mạng xã hội?
In terms of when social media, when guests reach out to us via social media, we definitely focus on turning it around very quickly and acting on it very quickly. We do have teams focused on exactly that, taking a look at social media, taking a look at public forums, and seeing exactly what challenges our guests are facing with their travels. And we are proactively trying our best to step in and be able to address those things. And we've got a lot of protocols in place already. If we think about how we identify it, a lot of our teams sit centrally in Europe. They might identify something in Vietnam, and they might reach out to us to be able to address it, to say deal with that issue, that particular issue. So there are so many different layers, and that's how we are consciously trying our best to listen to our guests and address it where it matters the most.
Như vậy thì tôi được hiểu rằng là ngoài việc là khách hàng có thể đặt dịch vụ tại Booking.com, thì trong quá trình của khách hàng họ đi du lịch và họ sử dụng dịch vụ thì họ sẽ luôn được theo dõi và luôn được quan tâm để đảm bảo rằng là kỳ nghỉ của họ sẽ đạt được những cái giá trị tốt nhất.
Yeah, for sure. If we take a look at how the process goes, we always encourage our partners that we work with, whether it's hotels, whether it's transportation, to really connect with the guests, not just after the booking, right? We talk about the pre-booking experience, the in-booking experience, and the post-booking experience. We want guests to know that we are with them along the way. And at Booking.com, even though we have invested a lot in making sure that these experiences are as seamless as possible for our guests and our partners, this is where our channel partners and our providers are incredibly important, because we are bringing the guests to you, but you are giving the guest those experiences, right? And so that's where this partnership continues to become a more critical point.
Và tôi được biết thì hiện tại thì khách hàng cũng rất là chuộng việc là họ sẽ feedback lại những cái trải nghiệm của họ với những dịch vụ mà họ đã sử dụng. Thì với ông thì với những đối tác họ làm tốt cái công việc phục vụ của họ, thì Booking.com sẽ có những chính sách hay là những ưu đãi gì cho họ? Và nếu như trường hợp ngược lại thì với những đối tác họ chưa hoàn thành tốt được những cam kết với Booking.com, thì ông cũng như là đội ngũ của mình sẽ có những hướng xử lý như thế nào để đảm bảo quyền lợi cho khách hàng?
So there are a few different kinds of layers here, right? Of course, the first layer begins at our guest reviews.
Yes.
Our guest reviews, which are all written by humans, read by humans, even
Yes.
moderated by humans, right? We have a lot of teams sitting centrally who monitor these reviews. If there's something incredibly, say, unusual that we suspect, we do connect with the properties or with the channel partners to see exactly what that problem is, right? And then, of course, if there's a security related challenge that we hear of from our customers, our first step is always to work very closely with authorities. I think that's why it's so critical for Booking.com to continue having a global presence across the world, because if we really want to bring you global customers, we also need to be able to support you from where we are. So, for example, in Vietnam, if something untoward were to happen in Vietnam, we have all of our procedures in place already. We've got a great relationship with the authorities. We've got a great relationship with our hotel and accommodation partners. And we have a really big team sitting in Vietnam supporting our guests.
Như vậy thì nếu mà có một lời khuyên cho du khách khi họ đặt dịch vụ, thì ông sẽ có lời khuyên như thế nào hoặc là những lưu ý như thế nào dành cho du khách để họ có một chuyến đi tốt nhất?
That's a really good question. I think it really depends on why you're traveling, right? What we're seeing is really the why is becoming very, very important. It's not about where I'm going or what I'm going to do or when I'm going to go. It's really about the why. So for me, once you discover the why, it really opens up a whole new place for you to travel to, right? And leveraging a lot of the tech that's happening, whether it's AI or whether it's even on Booking.com, where we have things like our smart filters and we have a lot of content to really show you new destinations and make it easier for you to experience the world. I think my best advice is look at how technology is able to give you a why as to why you want to travel. I think that's really the best advice. Really ask yourself, why do you want to make this trip?
Ngoài những cái giá trị mà Booking.com mang đến cho du khách, ngoài những xu hướng mà Booking.com cũng đã dự đoán cho thị trường, thì tôi thấy là Booking.com ngày càng cá nhân hóa nhiều hơn nữa chuyến đi cho du khách. Thông qua những báo cáo của Booking.com đã đưa ra thị trường, thì tôi có thấy một cái yếu tố rất là hay là Booking.com có một cái ưu đãi là nhắc về việc là khách du lịch có thể đi du lịch cùng với thú cưng của họ. Và tôi thấy rằng là yếu tố này rất là ít nền tảng ở Việt Nam họ có thể giới thiệu cho du khách, và thậm chí là một số đơn vị ở Việt Nam họ sẽ hầu như là họ sẽ không vui lắm khi mà khách du lịch có thú cưng đi cùng. Thì tôi không biết là lý do vì sao Booking.com lại chọn giới thiệu nội dung này cho du khách, có thể là khách Việt Nam hoặc khách quốc tế đến Việt Nam.
So if we think about Booking.com's mission, right, we want to make it easier for everyone to experience the world. When we say everyone, we mean everyone. If we think about some of the data points that have come out from certain governments, right, to your point for pets, I'm going to use myself as an example. I don't have children, right? My pets are as close as I'm going to get to children. So it's critically important for me. And so for us, it's actually not a very complicated question. We truly mean everyone. We want to make it easy for everyone to experience the world, whether you're a parent of children, whether you're a parent of a little fluffy four-legged dog, you know, whether you are traveling with your partner, whether you're traveling with your family, whether you're traveling with your grandparents. That's really what is driving Booking.com's mission and why we continue to innovate in the way that we do. And the biggest support that we see here, right? We not just get these insights from guests. We have all of these studies where we interview guests, see what traveler trends are, see what guests want to expect in the future of travel. But also a very big part of our ecosystem is our partners, our accommodation partners, our hotel partners, who are also constantly innovating what they're offering. It is not like, you know, Booking.com when we opened 10 years ago in Vietnam, for example. It's not that we went and asked partners Can you host pets, for example? We just had incredibly supportive, welcoming partners who said, hey, you know what? I actually allow pets. And that kind of what really pushed a lot of hotels to be able to offer the same thing on booking.com. And if we think about how our partners are also shaping travel with our guests, intergenerational travel, over the last couple of years, we've seen so much travel with people. Maybe it's not a couple traveling with your children, but actually it's a couple traveling with your older parents, to be able to enable those kinds of travel as well. So it's really a team effort here, right? The guests give us the insights, our partners make it happen, and booking.com kind of builds the bridge between the two of them.
Ngoài việc đó thì Booking.com có tạo ra những chính sách hoặc những ưu đãi dành cho những tệp khách tạm gọi là ngách hơn khi mà họ du lịch đến Việt Nam hoặc khách du lịch Việt Nam đi nước ngoài. Tôi ví dụ như khách ăn chay, khách ăn trường chay, hoặc là khách họ là LGBTQI, thì mình sẽ có những cái chính sách hoặc những cái chương trình ưu đãi nào dành cho họ.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So if we take a look at, say, Vietnam as an example, right? Coffee culture is it's a really big part of why people travel here. And on booking.com, we try our best to highlight it, not just via our content on our partners' pages on booking.com, also through all of the local activations that we do. We try our best to make all of our events in Vietnam as locally relevant as possible, right? And if we take a look at welcoming different kinds of guests, we've got also our Travel Proud program, which is available in a lot of countries. And one of the biggest countries in Asia is, of course, in Thailand, where we've actually got the second largest number of partners with the Travel Proud badge on booking.com, which means they're very welcoming to LGBTQ guests. And what we do on our end is to be able to provide training for partners who want to welcome guests from the community, and what do they need to think about? How do they need to maybe change their services to cater to guests from the community? We continue to find ways to keep travel extremely inclusive, right? Even if we think about travelers who are differently able, maybe travelers who are in wheelchairs, we want to make sure that the content that we offer on booking.com to our partners to be able to fill out their listings, it's extremely clear that all of this is available for all kinds of guests from all walks of life. And all of this content is incredibly important because at the end of the day, if we look how consumers are now engaging with technology, right? If we go back to the idea of using AI, I'm no longer just Googling, I'm typing in exactly what I want. If I am, say, a wheelchair traveler, that will be a big part of my prompt, right? And so we want to make sure that all of this is very clear on our partners' pages.
Ở góc nhìn là một du khách cũng như là một người quản lý cấp cao của Booking.com, thì ông nghĩ như thế nào về việc hiện tại sẽ có rất nhiều khách sạn hoặc những khu resort, họ không chỉ đơn thuần là địa điểm cung cấp chỗ lưu trú, mà họ sẽ kiến tạo bản thân họ sẽ trở thành một điểm đến với đầy đủ các dịch vụ ăn uống vui chơi giải trí, và có cả những hoạt động ví dụ như là bảo vệ môi trường, tôi chẳng hạn ví dụ như trồng san hô, thả rùa, hoặc là đi sâu vào những bản làng để tìm hiểu về văn hóa địa phương đó, để tăng thời gian trải nghiệm của du khách tại resort hay khách sạn đó. Thì với ông nhận định như thế nào về xu hướng này?
I feel it's absolutely moving in the right direction, right? It's the right thing to do. If we think about, well, like you mentioned, releasing turtles back into the ocean, right? Let's put aside the fact that it's a great experience for the customers. As people, it's also just the right thing to do. So it's a really exciting step that a lot of hotels are building experiences around what communities need, what the environment needs. It's extremely exciting. Why this is going to work is because what we're also seeing in our studies is people are chasing experiences. They're no longer just chasing a holiday. One of the reasons, and a lot of our partners tell us this as well, they're seeing exactly what you just said. More and more people are coming to these luxury resorts or luxury properties, and they're actually not leaving. They're eating at the restaurants, they're going to the hotel spa, they're using the gym to feel a little bit more fitness. They're also traveling within the area of the hotel. And the reason behind it is because when travelers, like I mentioned, with this intention, this very high intention to travel and really make it very meaningful, travelers want to be able to do all of this without sacrificing convenience, right? And this is why sometimes it's a little bit challenging for partners to be able to keep up with these trends, because what we're seeing is guest expectations are getting higher, but the level of convenience that they want, they still want a very seamless, frictionless experience. So what we're seeing is now more and more partners are actually putting those into place, which is absolutely the right thing to do, because across all of our trends, we're also seeing that commonality. People want that convenience. They want their accommodation, for example, to be able to offer as much of that as possible. So to be able to come in to a property that perhaps I found on AI, and I come in knowing that they've got sustainable practices, they've got community practices, they offer all of these things on site. It's such a great way for customers to experience things very simply. And it's also a great choice for partners, because the more money the customer spends on your property is also a lot more profitable at the end of the day.
Ngoài việc các resort và các khách sạn họ đang tự biến họ thành một địa điểm, gọi là một địa điểm tham quan, thì tôi nhận thấy bên cạnh đó thì hàng không cũng vậy. Họ nâng cấp nhiều hơn về dịch vụ, họ có nhiều hoạt động hơn trên chuyến bay. Có nghĩa là tôi thấy rằng khách hàng họ đang thoát ly khỏi câu chuyện là lựa chọn hàng không giá rẻ, và họ tiến đến lựa chọn những dịch vụ bay cao cấp hơn, nhiều trải nghiệm hơn. Có thể là ăn uống, quà tặng, hoặc là những chương trình khác đi kèm của họ khi mà họ transit tại một địa điểm nào đó.
Yeah, it's very exciting, right? Because this gives me an incredible amount of confidence in Booking.com's vision of the connected trip. We've talked about it for a long time, because we've always innately known that this is what customers want. Customers want to be able to experience luxury, sustainability across every single vertical, right? So like you mentioned, on airplanes, it's no longer just about sitting and, putting my seatbelt and reaching a destination. That itself is an experience. Meeting the guests where they are is not just about using technology, right? If we look at all of the different layers in the guest journey, that's where we kind of have to figure out exactly what they're looking for and fill those little gaps. So like you mentioned earlier, for example, maybe there's like luxury shopping that's tied to flights. More and more people, even personally for me, sometimes I want to treat myself to a business class flight to be more comfortable, but it's always fully booked. What we're seeing is overall after COVID, right? The projections of the travel industry has grown so huge. Research has shown that by 2030, I believe, the travel GDP is going to be at $4 trillion globally. That's part of the reason why this is happening, because now guests, even though perhaps they are being a little bit more, not say choosy, very personal, very intentional about their travel, they're still willing to spend more money. I think that's really it. They're willing to spend on those experiences. They're not being frugal about things. They're not trying to save a lot of money. When they travel, they want to spend that money. And because they're willing to spend that money, they want those experiences to also reflect the idea of luxury that they're expecting.
Thưa ông, thì trước đây khách du lịch, tôi chỉ nói vui thôi, là khách du lịch Việt Nam họ có suy nghĩ rằng khi biết đến Booking.com là một nền tảng thiên về đặt phòng nhiều, nhưng mà thời điểm hiện tại thì họ cũng sẽ biết được là Booking.com là một nền tảng không chỉ có phòng, còn có vé máy bay, vui chơi giải trí. Thì trong kế hoạch phát triển sắp tới, ông và cũng như đội ngũ của mình có thể có những kế hoạch nào đó để cho khách hàng hiểu hơn là Booking.com đang là một nền tảng cung cấp đa dạng dịch vụ cho họ trong một chuyến đi, thậm chí là với một chuyến đi đó họ có thể an tâm đặt tất cả các dịch vụ ở tại Booking.com.
For sure, absolutely. I think it's such an exciting time. I've been at Booking.com now for over 11 years, and so much has changed, right, in the last decade. So to see all of this happening is incredibly exciting for me. You mentioned our flights and our ground transportation. We've really seen an immense uplift. We've seen double-digit growth for both verticals. So we are seeing more and more guests use it. So if I can use Vietnam as an example, right? One way we are trying to enable this is that we've also partnered with Vietnam Airlines, right? So now when you book on Booking.com and you book a flight on Vietnam Airlines, you are actually able to convert your spend. You get 5 Lotus miles for every dollar spent. So we're trying our best to be able to connect the trip for the customer, and that's how we are hoping to bring more customers, not just to our hotel partners, but also to our airline partners, to our ground transportation partners, and to our attraction partners. We're really trying our best to connect the trip for the guest so you don't have to worry about it as a channel partner of ours.
Câu hỏi này xuất phát từ ban biên tập của Travelsic. Với góc độ của ông thì ông nhìn nhận như thế nào về du lịch tại Việt Nam, đặc biệt là Phú Quốc? Đó là một điểm đến mới nổi, thu hút khá nhiều khách du lịch trong nước và ngoài nước tìm đến Phú Quốc. Và hầu như thời gian này thì Phú Quốc luôn luôn trong giai đoạn cháy phòng. Và khách du lịch đặt niềm tin rất là nhiều trên nền tảng booking.com để tìm được những cái deal tốt nhất, phòng chất lượng nhất. Thì với góc độ là booking.com, ông có nhận xét như thế nào về Phú Quốc?
You know, it's very funny that you asked me about it because I'm flying there in a few hours. Very excited to go there.
Okay.
You know, I think when it comes to new destinations within Vietnam, right? If you think a few years ago, again, like I mentioned, it was very much Ho Chi Minh cities, Hanoi, Nha Trang. But now we're seeing more and more destinations. I think with Phu Quoc, it's also because of the accessibility. It's very easy to get to, right? So at booking.com, what we are hoping to do is, of course, we want to support our customers and our partners in Phu Quoc, but we are also trying our best to highlight more destinations because Vietnam is beautiful in so many parts of the country, right? It's not just these big destinations. We've also got destinations like Mui Ne, which is beautiful. It's got so much to offer. It's got beautiful beaches. It's got luxury escapes. It's got, again, something for everyone. So at booking.com, what we're trying to do is really shine a light on all the different kinds of destinations. And for big markets like Phu Quoc, for example, where we're seeing a lot of tourists go in, we are working very hard to be able to expand our supply. We know that perhaps in Phu Quoc, there's still a lot of supply partners, properties and accommodations that maybe are not available online. So we're trying our best to be able to work with them and put them on booking.com to be able to not just bring more guests into Phu Quoc, but to be able to support Phu Quoc's accommodation and hospitality industry to be able to have a global audience.
Như vậy thì chắc là cho tôi hỏi một câu cuối cùng thôi, thì nếu mà có 3 từ khóa để kêu gọi du khách sử dụng dịch vụ của booking.com thì ông sẽ chọn 3 từ khóa nào?
That's a very tough question, only 3 words. But I would say, you know, if we think about the themes that we talked about today, right? I would say AI is a very big part of it. I would say at booking.com on our platform, we've incorporated quite a lot of AI to make it easier for you to be able to find the destination and the hotel or accommodation of your choice. I think the second one is definitely leveraging the tech that's on our website. You know, we've got not just our smart filters to be able to help you filter down a property that you want. We've also got, like I mentioned earlier, with Travel Proud, right? If you're looking at inclusive travel, if you are from the community, we're trying to make it easier for you to experience the world with your loved ones. And I think the last one, which, you know, if we think about sustainability, that will be one of our biggest bets going into the future, right? At booking.com, we are trying our best to be able to remove that friction for you as a guest. You know, we don't want you to worry about it. We want you to trust that we've already thought about this and we are showing you options that are most relevant for you. So I think those would be my 3 best tips. And I think my biggest tip of all is always book early.
Okay.
I would say always book early. I think Vietnam is such a huge trending and growing destination for booking.com that we are confident that well into the future, Vietnam is going to continue growing incredibly well. So always, I would say, book early if you truly want to explore the beauty of Vietnam.
Ok. Thông qua cuộc nói chuyện với ông thì tôi cũng được biết đến rất là nhiều chính sách cũng như là kế hoạch của ông, cộng sự của mình cũng như là booking.com đang cố gắng hoàn thiện hơn nữa để giúp cho kỳ nghỉ của khách Việt Nam hoặc là khách quốc tế đến Việt Nam ngày càng trọn vẹn hơn. Trước khi kết thúc buổi trò chuyện này, tôi muốn ông sẽ có một số lời chia sẻ hoặc là có thể là lời cảm ơn chẳng hạn gửi đến các đối tác của ông tại cũng như là booking.com tại Việt Nam, cũng như là những người du khách họ đang sử dụng dịch vụ của booking.com.
To all of our customers in Vietnam and across the world, you know, thank you for trusting booking.com, and we truly hope we are making it easier for you to experience the world. And I think in Vietnam specifically, given the job that I perform in the country, I really want to say the heartfelt thanks to our partners. Without our partners, our customers wouldn't have anywhere to go to. So our partners in Vietnam continuing to elevate their offerings, elevate their service levels. It's such a beautiful thing to see. And we're super excited to continue growing with our partners in Vietnam.
tôi và cũng như là Travelseek rất là gửi lời cảm ơn đến ông khi ông đã dành thời gian để chia sẻ nhiều hơn nữa về các thông tin về Booking.com, những xu hướng du lịch đối với khách Việt Nam cũng như là những quan điểm cá nhân của ông để du khách Việt Nam thông qua tập podcast này họ có thể nhìn nhận được nhiều hơn nữa các thông tin giá trị cũng như là các thông điệp du lịch mà Booking.com đang gửi đến thị trường Việt Nam. Một lần nữa rất là cảm ơn ông.